Welcome back to the channel, guys. Today we're going to be working on the 0300. We're doing push rod tubes and we're going to paint her up and make her look pretty. So right now I've got the intake and the exhaust manifolds off, and I started on the push rod tubes as well as the baffling. I've got it removed. So here's the push rod tubes we're putting on it, the real push rod tubes. Here's what it looked like beforehand, before I got started on it. And actually, here's a cool little 172 RG I saw. It's a 1979, and from my knowledge, it came from Cuba. That's what I was told, actually. It's really, or Colombia, actually, not Cuba. But the airplane, it was in really rough shape, actually. When it came in, the paint's in rough shape, the interior, every bit of it was in rough shape, because in those kind of countries, I don't believe they have the proper FAA angles and whatnot. So I'd say that's the reason why it's in such rough shape anyway. But this would be a really fun project plane. But they've been doing a lot of work to it, and I may one day get a plane like this as a project. I've actually been looking at some, and I will video and post videos on it and stuff like that on the YouTube. But this has the 0360 in it, the 180 horse with the adjustable pitch prop. It's pretty. It could be a really nice plane. It's got potential, that's for sure. The engine, as of my knowledge, it seemed to not have very many hours on it, and the airframe seemed to be pretty low. Here's a nice 182. And actually, here's a hanger that I bought that I plan on doing a lot of YouTube videos in, and also maybe possibly having an A&P work in here for me. Today, we're going to be working on the 172. I'm going to start by replacing the push rod tubes. The old style, the flare kind that has the little rubber boot on the end with the, it's got real push rod tubes. It's got the spring. I have everything apart. I believe I'm going to be painting it. I got the real Continental gold color paint. I got the black for the jugs, black for the valve cover, and then we're going to be painting that gold as well as the heat shield. We're going to be removing it, painting it white. And I got the intake manifold off, and I'm sending it off to get polished, and I'm going to polish the exhaust as well and paint the rest of the heat shield. And we also got a right brake that seems to be sticking, so we're going to have to jack that up and find out what the deal is with that. And without further ado, let's get started. Right, here's the push rod tubes. It's real gaskets. They're based out of Tennessee. I got valve cover gaskets, all new hardware. The silicone that you got to use on it. This side I haven't started yet, but I had a pretty good little oil leak. You can see it. It started pretty bad on a trip back. It started having a pretty bad oil leak out of that front push rod tube on the left side. And now let's fix it. Back to the voiceovers. So I had some music playing in the background. That's why I've been doing voiceovers. And as we know, YouTube don't like, music. So here I am. I've got one of the push rod tubes in. Went fairly easy. You have sealant that you put, goes on the back side of the head, and you have a seal and a 30-degree washer, I believe it is, and the one that goes against the crankcase is a 10-degree with the spring and the black seal and the collar. And you have a seal that I just pointed on that goes on the back side of that. You have 3 bolts. I think they're 7/16 or whatever. I can't recall right off the top of mine, but that's what I think I remembered them to be. And you have to remove all that stuff, replace the seals, sand down the back side of the cover, and make sure it's real good and it will seal. And right here's on the other side. I actually hadn't got started on that. I started on one side, finished it up, lifted it apart, and Then went to the other side, took it apart, got it lined up, and then I put it together, on this side, and then I went to the other side. So, wasn't too bad, but I was just showing here, I was cleaning up the pan. I painted up the pan. I painted it black, because what Continental usually uses, their cases were gold, and the cooling fins closest to the crankcase was black, and the cylinder heads were gold, and the valve covers were black, and the oil pan was black. But we ain't doing an overhaul on this motor quite yet. She's pretty low time. Just got 300 hours. So right now, I'll just clean it up, make it look pretty as I can. But here's the push rod tube I was telling you about, and the sealant. I don't recall it's this orange tube of sealant is what I use. It's copper coated thing, or something copper sealant. Just for the extra bit of, security to keep from a leak happening is more or less what it is. Because these old 300s, once the old saying, if they ain't leaking oil, they don't have oil in them. So that's kind of the ideal. But I'm trying to get all the oil dried up on it for right now. But one thing at a time. But the copper washers, they leak pretty good too, and all that. But I try to replace those about every other or every annual. That way, just helps with the leaks and whatnot. But I cleaned up the exhaust too. I polished those, and the end results, I got all that stuff, the intake and all that stuff I was talking about painting. I got it Sierra coated, and then which is basically a paint that you cook on, and it's very durable. I don't change the tolerances or nothing, nor add weight to it actually. NASCAR actually uses that paint, but on the heat shield, I painted it up. I painted it up real good with the white paint. Yeah, white paint on the engine. Sounds crazy, but the outcome's real nice, and I just believe it'll be a good thing, for the look of the plane, and, it'll just add a little bit of, I don't know, characteristics or whatever you want to say to it, and I think it'll look good. But the thing about it is the oil and whatnot, it'll turn it, but I believe it'll be good. So here's how it's going. I took a microfiber rag and cut it in about a quarter. Folded it up like a hot dog and shoved it back in the pushrod tubes. This is the exhaust. This is the intake. And I got the push rods out and the valve train. That's the exhaust, intake. The bushings look pretty good in there. All the passages look like that, like they look good. They look like they're getting old. And now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a cut off right there, snap on angle grinder. I'm gonna come up about right here. I'm gonna cut it, and then I'm gonna pull it out right there, and I'm gonna flip this end around, use it to drive it out of the head. I gotta clean all this up. Somebody put silicone on it, which is very unnecessary. When you take it apart, you're better off to put new gaskets on this stuff. It costs a little bit extra, but it saves a ton of headache. And let's get her done. This is a new jet that they've brought in. It's based out of the airport that I'm out of, and I just wanted to throw this in real quick. This was a 421, I believe, that flew in from, I believe, Canada. It wasn't a Canadian number, but I believe that was the trip where it was coming from here it was a couple months ago. So, and here's the heat shield before I started painting it and doing stuff to it. And I just had everything marked. I was going to use the old baffling, but I just got the new black stuff and some snap rivets. here comes the fun part, and that is putting back what I've got torn apart. So, of course, I could just put it back together how it was without painting it and doing all that stuff to it. But I go a little bit extra, I guess you could say. I took all the baffling and all the valve covers and the intake manifold and the exhaust manifold even, and I Sierra coated the valve covers and the intake, but not the exhaust. I polished it, so turns out here's a 182 that was in for maintenance that a mechanic out of actually a different airport, not out of the airport that I'm based out of. He was doing some maintenance on it, and I believe it was down for annual actually. Here's the Cutlass. They've got it most part together. They're just doing some more miscellaneous things to it. And it's starting to come together with a little bit of TLC, of course. And here was a full house. It was basically a full house of the FBO. I was there to see what was going on with a friend and whatnot, and I was just wanting to I like seeing what's going on in the FBO. And that Baron there, the black and red one, has 2 new motors, and they done a new interior in it as well. It's really sharp plane. And here's another 58. Thanks for watching.